Good morning and welcome to the very first day of EMCSA, the E-Mobility Congress of South Africa 2021. My name is Rob Walker. I have the privilege of hosting the next 2 days with my good friend Devan Mudli. And we're going to be talking about all things EV for the next 2 days. We have a collection of both local and international experts guiding us through the maze that is EVs. And I'm joined in studio from Devan. Devan is CMO for Electric Life Rides, as well as a few other projects. So he has the privilege of talking us through and chatting to us about some of the panelists. So before we get going, a couple of house rules. This morning you'll see we are live on Facebook as well as live on our Zoom feed for everyone who registered for the event. If you didn't manage to register, we'd like to invite you to comment on our Facebook link, and your comments will be taken up, and we'll try as best as possible to present those questions to our presenters as we go through the day. Secondly, to everyone watching on Zoom, you'll notice we have our first poll of the morning live. This poll will be up for the next 10 minutes, and we'd really appreciate if you can go in there, answer that poll, and help us throughout the day, gather some feedback. We'll be taking that information and we'll be changing it as each speaker comes up, so you'll be able to vote and interact with us and chat. To everyone who's on our Zoom call, Devan, we really want them to put some questions through. Let's chat to our speakers. We've got the opportunity to chat to some of the world's best experts out there. We know we've got some great people tuned in. Please, guys, send us through your questions. We'll put them to our presenters and we'll try and get their answers. So, Devan, chat to me quickly. Who are you really looking forward to in day one?
Well, we're looking forward to Amiene. She's the founder of Green Cab, an amazing human being. And as we go through the 2 days, we're going to talk to the best presenters, the best speakers in the world. They're going to guide us through their businesses, their 100%. Context, as we now get ready for the future. The future is EV, the future is real.
Yep.
We need to now transition from the current mobility situation that we have into electric vehicles. And this 2 days is going to help us get there. And we're going to have a wonderful live stream conversation with our delegates, with anyone in the community that wants to interact with us, and we're going to go step by step. Obviously, we know the cars are coming, the infrastructure is coming. We are doing this for the future of the planet, for future generations.
100%.
And this has to happen.
100%.
And therefore, this conversation starts here, but with a South African context.
Yes.
We've seen how other countries have gone forward in the world. I'd like to be part of that team, together with you, together with all our partners, all our speakers, to get to the stage where we are more EV focused than Norway.
100%.
That's where we're
EV
going.
focused in Norway. Nice, I like it. So, Devan, before we jump into this morning's sessions, give our viewers out there, everyone on Zoom, a little bit of background about yourself. Where do you come and how do you fit into this EV mix as we sit this morning on the 1st of March?
Awesome. Well, I'm a petrol head, diesel head, and now electric head of note. I've been in the motor industry for 20 years. I've worked for 3 local OEMs in various roles and positions. Most importantly, in my opinion, product management.
Yep.
So therefore, understand the entire process of importing of cars, pricing of cars, speccing of cars. And I think that's the perfect background as we now go into this new era of electric vehicles.
Sure.
And also then to make sure that with the industry leaders, we're all talking the same language. Yes, there's challenges, but yes, we can do it. And ultimately, as a team of maybe also senior leaders in South Africa, thought leaders, we can get us from where we are to where we want to go.
100%.
And over and above cars, it's going to be bikes, scooters, boats, trucks, and all the rest of it as well. So that's my background, and therefore I'd be so honored to add value and to help the conference over the next 2 days.
Fantastic. So obviously this morning we're joined by Amiene. She's going to talk to us about how to seizing the climate crisis and the rise of EVs, and more particularly to drive women's participation in this economy. Really interesting lady. I think anyone who knows Amiene will know how interactive and how excitable she is. I think we're very privileged to have her on our talk. And then straight after that, we're going to be joined by Daryl Chapman, who probably has maybe one of the most difficult jobs in South Africa at the moment. Let's be very honest. He is the e-mobility project manager from Eskom. I think he always gets the hard questions.
Yes.
So it's going to be interesting to see how he interacts with everyone and those questions that he's going to be ready for, and maybe a few that he isn't. So that people understand how we set up the EMCSA conference is there will be about a 20 to 25 minute session where the speakers will talk. Then we'll have a 5-minute break where we will try and answer any questions that we've received for the first half of the speaker session. And the idea is that we don't get to a situation where a speaker has spoken for 30 minutes and our participants have forgotten maybe what they first said. So we're going to have a small break, maybe call it a comfort break, coffee break in the first 5 minutes, and then the speaker will come back and they will continue the conversation for the rest of their session.
Yeah.
And we're going to have 5-minute breaks in between those speakers so we can wrap up. Everyone can maybe get a cup of coffee if you're tuning in from home or from work. If you're at work, maybe answer the boss's emails while you quickly come back and check in whether that's at EMCSA. And then we're going to go on to our next speaker. And then at 11:20 after Daryl, we're going to break for a lunch session. Where people can go and get something to eat, have a bit of, again, comfort break, and then we come back again for the afternoon session. What we'll do is our morning session will go out live on Facebook. Once the morning session is finished, we're going to end that one, and then we're going to come back for the afternoon session. So anyone tuning in on Facebook, please don't be upset if you tune in at 11:30, you see we're not live. It doesn't mean the event's finished. We've just gone for a bit of a comfort break, and we'll be back shortly. Yeah. So let's talk about Amiene, Managing Director of the Green Cab. What are you hoping to hear from her this morning?
Well, I want to hear her story as well. So where she's coming from, all the challenges that she's had up to now, and the future plans that she has. She's got once you listen to her, you're going to fall in love with it. You're going to fall in love with her, I promise you. She's got amazing plans for the future.
Sure.
And I want to hear that story, and I want to get also her thoughts as to how we move the EV taxi industry forward. And I think it's a perfect starting point just to get our listeners feel around EV range, product acceptability, viability, and to get the conversation flowing in that regard. And then hopefully our guests interact, ask us the questions, and we go from there.
Sure, 100%. So I think, Devon, from you and me, maybe that's enough. I'm sure people have heard enough from us. Yeah. Amiene, are you ready and you with us this morning? Sure. So just a quick reminder while Amiene tunes in with us this morning, we have some questions for anyone who's on our Zoom call. You can just quickly click the questions tab. You get to ask a question, and our team here will try and make sure we get through them as quick as we can. We'll pose those questions to the speaker during the 5-minute break, or if there's an opportunity before or after that. And also just a quick reminder that our first poll is currently live. We'd like to have you answer that poll because we'll be collecting all that information at the end of the conference. So we'll be able to then bring that polls all together. So without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Amiene from the Green Cab. Amiene, for myself and Devon, welcome this morning all the way from here in Pretoria. How are you?
Extremely well, thank you. That was such a beautiful, warm and loving welcome. So thank you to both of you.
Fantastic. So Amiene, I think that everyone's heard enough from me and Devon. We can talk all morning. Yeah. Let's hand over to you and take you through our first session with this morning.
Fantastic. It'll be my pleasure. In fact, if we cast our minds back a whole year, and hats off to Rob, Devon, Shanta, and the whole Jukwa team for your stickability and your tenacity, because basically a year ago, almost to the day, we would have gathered in person at Spear, and what a ride it has been since. And in fact, I think there's no sector, maybe few other sectors, that's been as fundamentally disrupted as the transport sector. So I have opted to focus a bit in the first section at looking at the spanner that COVID has put in the very much squarely in the transport wheel, and hope to leave you at the end with some wonderful solutions and examples of how we can make the best of this and drive back better, and hopefully leave you inspired about the role that the cab sector can play in that. So I shall launch into my presentation. If I can, I think I need some assistance. It doesn't seem to want to go forward. If I press forward, let me quickly see. Yeah, I have, and it's worked perfectly up till now, Murphy's Law. So Fritz, should I quickly stop sharing and just reshare, and then see whether I think it's my computer. So let me quickly see. I sincerely apologize for this. We even had a wonderful dry run where it worked perfectly. Okay, excellent. So we are back on the presentation and I shall now say screen share. So let's try this again. So much for an icebreaker. Hey, excellent. There we go. Fritz, are we back on? Okay, I'm saying from the beginning. There we go. Let's see if we can move along now. Yay. So our journey started a good 10 years ago. In fact, myself and 4 other women started the Green Cab, founded it in the middle of an ecological recession, and we knew it couldn't be business as usual. So we did various things, as you will see that slide is demonstrating. This is for those who haven't heard about the Green Cab. So a good 10 years ago, we already ran dual fuel petrol gas. You'll see the toroidal tanks down there under our vehicles. We deployed fuel additives, something called Envirox, tailpipe devices on the back of our vehicles called a blade for the particulate matter and noxious gases, a diesel particulate filter, all with the mind of saying it cannot be business as usual, and how can we actually reduce our carbon footprint? And we've carved a niche for ourselves over the past decade, particularly in corporate transport and also for events. And you'll see a little picture there of our green transport certificate that we issue at the end of an event to say it's been fully compensated. The carbon has been compensated in full. And we've serviced no fewer than the last 4 World Economic Forum on Africa events, the biggest feather in our cap to date. And then the picture right on the right there, very much 4 years ago, started boldly proclaiming our electric aspirations. Going electric as a vehicle means as a vehicle to drive hope in sustainable livelihoods and sustainable urban transport. So I've mentioned the COVID spanner, big one. I'm going to focus on a few macro trends on account of COVID, and one of the obvious ones, given that people had to practice social distancing and various lockdown measures worldwide, is the rise in non-motorized transport. By way of an example, I've put up this London slide, and the London Mayor Sadiq Khan is extremely forward-looking through the Transport for London initiative, and in fact they've launched another initiative since called Street Space Program. They've acknowledged that currently, as we speak, London is still sitting, apologies for the frog, London public transport is running at 1/5 of its occupancy. Apologies. Which means that they are expecting a 10-fold increase in, apologies, shoot, that's a big frog. There you go. So there's a possible, they've got to accommodate 10-fold increase in cycling and an expected 5-fold increase in walking. To that end, they've already increased their formal cycleways to 160 kilometers. They've also partnered with Vio with their little e-scooters and very ingenuitively or innovatively, they have actually fitted sensors, smart sensors that measures both the pollution and obviously pollution and noise, so that they can map that for the City of London. So that's a very interesting phenomenon, obviously also in the rise of micro-mobility, and not to be left behind, like the Triumph, certainly clean air triumphing in Paris, and we've seen these pictures abound on the internet of various international cities before and after COVID. In that case, Lime, the ride sharing, have just added a moped, the vehicle on the left there, 2-seater, to their offering for clients. So very much a rise in micro-mobility. That's an obvious one. Hopefully that will, to a large extent, be something of the past. Then there is the tragic stories, and this one close to home for those of us who are South Africans. In the news less than a week ago, is the fact that this old stalwart, in fact, it was 37 years in operation, had to finally close its service, and it was pretty much the go-to for for intercity transport, and it's a tragic loss, obviously, because it also reduces the footprint when people share a large bus like that, but also in terms of the devastating loss in livelihood opportunities. What hasn't experienced a devastating loss, and I think we are all also proudly familiar with Mr. Musk's accomplishments of late. And if you see that little yellow chart on the left, he was hardly on the charts in terms of the richest, in this case, men still in the world. But in the last year alone have seen a growth, 548% growth, largely buoyed by Tesla stock. So our homeboy G is understandably very happy in that picture. What it has meant for the other OEMs, traditional ones, the likes of Ford, for instance, has also recently, in late 2020, had to close a 100-year-old operation of a facility in Brazil, where they've made ICE vehicles. So I think that's also an inevitable consequence. They have used the opportunity, though, to signal their intent to go full electric, at least in Europe, by 2030. That's a photo of their e-transit vehicle, delivery vehicle. Similarly, another laggard, because all the big ones, all the other OEMs, or most of the other OEMs, Audi, Mercedes, BMW, etc., have all already indicated their electric aspirations. And one of the laggards has been General Motors. And fortunately, they've now joined the fold. Their chief marketing officer is calling it an inflection point where everything changes. And their GM, they're very much acknowledging the climate crisis, and that by 2035, that's quite ambitious. Everybody, hence the everybody slogan, they foresee will be able to drive electric. So if Fritz can help us out with a little fun, Devin, you've mentioned Norway in the introduction, just a little clip that shows us how aggressively GM, and the Americans in particular, is intending to go electric.
Did you know that Norway sells way more electric cars per capita than the US? Norway. Well, I won't stand for it. Never mind. With GM's new Ultium battery, we're gonna crush those losers. Crush them! Let's go, America. Keenan, Norway's out EVing us. Wait, what's this?
Oh, it's my daughter's birthday. She's really into pirates
I don't
lately.
care. Grab an EV, meet me in Norway.
Okay, can I say goodbye to my family?
Nope.
All right.
Aquafina, sorry to disturb you, but Norway's beating us at EVs.
Nuh-uh.
Uh-huh.
Nuh-uh.
Uh-huh. Meet me there in an hour.
Can I ride with you?
No! GM's Ultium battery is made for all types of vehicles, so soon everyone can drive an EV. Oh!
Why didn't we all just go together?
Knowing Will, he's probably flying private.
Hey, Norway, listen up, you fish-loving! Oh, this place is adorable. Damn it. Where are you guys?
We're in Finland. Where are you?
I'm in Norway!
Norway? You're in Sweden.
Damn it!
On pretty much on Will and the Americans, say the last laugh there, him landing up in Sweden, said something for the sense of geography. But it's actually given rise to, I think Audi has followed suit and actually brought out a video on the same, in fact, the same globe lands up in actual Norway, this time with a Norwegian speaking to it. So it's kind of a fun way to look at it. So staying in America, most of us, because I think I'm preaching or sharing with the converted, will be familiar with the Biden-Harris rejoining the Paris Agreement, and that is a big big sigh, a collective sigh of relief for the whole world. And in line with their green plans, they have declared that their fleet of 645,000 government vehicles will all be converted to electric. So that will obviously make significant inroads. I think when we hear from Daryl later, their facilities managers will have to ramp it up. In fact, they're currently foreseeing that it will take about 3 years in order to ramp up the necessary support, both in terms of charging infrastructure and grid stability and support to be able to meet that aspiration. Big business, more often than not, lead. So Amazon has engaged Rivian, as most of you might also know, to produce no more than 100,000, i.e. the entire fleet, by 2030 in the next 10 years, and having 10,000 vehicles on the road by the end of 2020, fully electric delivery vehicles. That too will make significant inroads, we can imagine. Just a little example closer to home, Premier Aluwindi mentioned, in fact, the whole phenomenon of digital nomads. That's also a bit of a COVID legacy. People working in remote places, and in fact, here's an example of Airstream, designing Airstreams with full office facilities. I think I'm up for one of those. Don't know about the rest of you. That'll be a lovely way to spend one's working time. Hey. Then in South Africa, the phenomenon of the electrification of food delivery. I took these pictures at my local Kauai. So they're using pedal assist electric bikes, which is a wonderful step in the right direction. Then there's obviously Checkers, that is using mellow cabs, which are proudly South African three-wheeler full electric vehicles for part of their delivery, but also obviously as a way to advertise their 60-minute service. So those are encouraging developments. Devin, I think I'm gonna leave it there for now and rather steal some time towards having a proper Q&A section at the end. Play our little driving force for the future video now, and then spend the bulk, the good 25 minutes odd of the second section looking at examples of driving back better and how we plan to do that, if that's okay with you.
When I was at the Raymond Ackerman Academy, most of us were getting late for the lectures because we're using trains and like public transport service. So I'm like, oh, what if I started a transport system? And then that's where the concept grew and grew and grew.
Zeb was a student in our 6-month development program and was an incredibly rawsome student, which is RAA and awesome. And we've had the real privilege of seeing him on his journey from entrepreneurial student to real entrepreneur and someone who has grown a business that's based on the philosophy that we teach here, that doing good is good business.
So one of the major driving forces behind starting GreenCab is very much the increasing congestion that cities like Cape Town is experiencing. We're experiencing that now as we're driving. And do you know that there's up to 250,000 vehicles in the CBD every day? And of those, an estimated 48% are actually private passenger vehicles. And therein lies the challenge. And moreover, an estimated 78%, so almost 80% of those private vehicles have got single person occupancy, so it's only a single driver. The GreenCab solution is one where we're looking at first and last mile. We're looking to get people to share a green ride, so ride share in a GreenCab, and thereby actually supporting a sustainable franchise opportunity.
When I was talking about sustainability and eco-mobility, that's when I said maybe that can make me different from other operators. Then let me look at the green angle, and then I started to explore other options that were available. But back then I didn't know about electric cars. I was thinking of hybrids, stuff like that. Yeah.
My name is Kanyiselo Kumalo. I represent Green Cape. We're a sector development agency set up by the Western Cape government to support the growth of the green economy in the Western Cape. And my focus is, as an energy analyst, looking at identifying opportunities in the sustainable transport space that will contribute to our economy and create potential jobs. The space that we work in is specifically looking at electric vehicles, and we support these kind of initiatives that look at fostering growth and maturation of the electric vehicle industry in South Africa, because ultimately fossil fuels will not be the end goal. There's a need to transition and look at alternative energy solutions that will contribute to mobility. So definitely the initiative that they're driving is one that we think is well in line with growing the industry in terms of electric mobility.
In Philippi and in other townships, there are more of ZEBs that need to be unearthed and supported to also achieve their dreams, to be able to take care of their kids, their families, and be able to put bread on the table. I've been in the taxi industry for some time now. It's predominantly men, very few women. Why? That's the question that we must ask ourselves.
So another driving force behind the Green Cab is that we want to redress the underrepresentation of women, as they've just mentioned, in the transport sector in particular. In fact, I think it's sitting somewhere at 2%. So we've got to ask ourselves, why is that the case? If we do not give women the opportunity to actually learn to drive, so we intend establishing a driver academy for women, that they'll be able to learn to drive for free, and then get them into an incubation program and then a franchisee acceleration program within Green Cab to then empower them to become franchisees.
Why women? Because I sincerely believe that the next generation of corporates that will emerge from this continent, from this country, and that will fundamentally change what capitalism looks like will be driven by women. Because we are innately collaborative, we are innately communal. So when we build our businesses, it's about taking everyone with us, our communities, our kids, our neighbors. And that's just the essence of women. I believe that there's something magical and something so special about African women, and we are the ones, as we accelerate these businesses to world class, that will change what this continent looks like.
I love the concept of bringing hope to other people. So like driving hope to my drivers that are going to be driving for me, but more importantly, contributing to helping fighting the climate change. Like Amiene would say, the buck stopped with us. So this is my small way of saying to the earth that gave me life, I want to contribute to conscientize people about this issue of climate change, what they can do, and help reduce pollution in the city and congestion on the road.
What I love about where the world is going is that, one, we're becoming more collaborative, but two, we're also becoming a lot more conscious about what we eat and what we drive and where we're going, etc. It's mind-blowing because, especially in a place like Cape Town where everyone's vegetarian or vegan, I think this idea will fly. But even just for me, I would love to have the option to go green or to hop into a green cab.
What we need at this stage to rev up our business is really a power surge from like-minded investors that would help us acquire our first 3 vehicles. We'll be operating that for 3 months in order to franchise it, and then also to be able to afford a DC fast charging facility, operations for a year, and then we will be able to self-fund thereafter, scaling up 60 vehicles in year 1 and then tripling it to 180 by year 3.
Investors will help us drive our dream. Like I said, I'm from Philippi. It's one of the poorest suburbs with crime and violence, but I've managed to live above the water. So I've got this passion, but I've got these limitations as well. So if someone can come and help drive my hope, they're gonna get a return on investment by what we'll be offering. So we can only do so much as entrepreneurs, and we need investment to buy these cars that we can't afford.
Zeb is awesome. Okay, let's just get that clear. He is just the most incredible person and the most incredible entrepreneur because he does this with a sense of purpose. Zeb is doing this because he has a very clear understanding of what his vision and mission is, why he's doing this, and that why is largely associated with his family and his daughter in particular, but that why is about an economy that really is looking at how are we more conscious of the environment and being more aware of how we do business that supports and protects our environment. So invest. It's a no-brainer.
So what you get as an investor is not only a return on your investment, but the opportunity to associate with a premium brand that drives hope. Yes, so that pretty much takes all of us a bit down memory lane for GreenCap. That video is already about 2 years old. That suggests how tenacious we've been at our aspirations, and we've become almost as aggressive as the Americans in terms of, and more ambitious in terms of our rollout plans. I'll speak to that shortly. So looking at opportunities to drive back better and examples, I thought this was the perfect picture that speaks to COVID and its opportunities. This is actually not, it's an artist's interpretation, yes, but it speaks to a company that is currently looking at the estimated 6.8 billion face masks that is discarded daily. The UN has declared it as a potential toxic waste pandemic of sorts, or epidemic of sorts, because roughly 75% of that goes to landfill. And now they have discovered that given that there's polypropylene in a face mask, if combined with concrete in a particular way, you can actually get a more elastic and durable road surface. So I thought that was quite a telling initiative. Moving closer to the cab sector, I've elected to highlight only these two examples. Some of the other ride-hailing companies such as Uber and Lyft internationally have already declared their electric aspirations. But two of them that are worthwhile highlighting is the BYD collaboration with Didi in China. As you'll see there, they have customized and custom built a vehicle that is called the D1 together with Didi, incorporating all the ride-hailing features and facilities and capabilities, and the new Blade battery, which is cobalt-free, by the way. And their market is roughly 550 million passengers, i.e. they've got active riders, 550 million, with more than 31 million drivers, conducting 6 million trips per day. So they've already rolled these out, 10,000 of them in November last year, and by the end of this year, plan to have at least 110,000, another 100,000 of them in circulation. Obviously, the aspiration there is that they will go full electric, all 31 million vehicles. The example below is the iconic black cab that about 3 years ago already, their fifth rendition, the TX5, is also commonly called the E-City, is electric with a range extender. And part of their campaign with their drivers, called #ReasonsToBelieve, have already established with real live rider data that they likely, if you operate in a TX E-City, you are likely to save over the first 5 years alone. Keep in mind, these London cabs go for 12, 15 years. You can save up to 27,000+ pounds. So the total cost of ownership, that doesn't have to be piloted anymore. It doesn't have to be proven anymore. It is, the evidence is abundant, and there's wonderful uptake in the cab sector internationally. So there's precedent. We're a little bit closer to home though. Both of these are Nissan Leafs, and they're all second-hand Nissan Leafs, which hamstrings us a bit in South Africa because we're not allowed to import second-hand electric vehicles. Nopia Rides operates in Nairobi for the most part, in Kenya. And then a little bit closer to home, Vaya has launched in Zimbabwe, also operating electric Nissans. Another Building Back Better example, I think that there is no tolerance left worldwide through consumers that companies do not take responsibility for their batteries and for the circular economy. So what Volkswagen has done at Salzgitter, it seems, factory facility customized and custom built just for recycling batteries, 90% they're going to be recycling of the content of those batteries. Obviously, there are second life applications, as most of the other OEMs are considering at this time. And also what helps with the uptake for the cab sector is that increasingly the OEMs, in the case of Volkswagen, they said that they guarantee no lower than or no more than 30% degradation, i.e. guarantee the battery life for 8 years, that it will still have 70% capacity. Now that is a huge vote of confidence. All we now need is for them to also back that up with the kilometers, because I think that is only for 150 kilometers, whichever comes first. Obviously in the cab sector, that comes in 1 year already. We attain those kind of mileage. So that's an encouraging sign of building back better. I think we're in for an electrifying ride in South Africa with many OEMs, both traditional and new players for the South African scene, such as BYD, rolling out offerings both to the public and hopefully also to the cab sector. These are already available, the E6 and the T3 in Zimbabwe on our doorstep. In the light of carbon tax, those of you who've listened to Tito Mbowene's budget speech, they actually increased the carbon tax from 127 rand to 134 rand per ton of CO2. So that constitutes about a 5.2 increase in carbon tax. That will add an incentive for corporates to actually take care of their scope 2 emissions and deploy electric vehicles in their fleets, both in their fleets and for their staffing transport and the like. So an example for us, this is quite recent, about 2 weeks ago. We've had quite a long-standing relationship with Hotel Vert, South Africa's greenest hotel at Cape Town International Airport. That's one of our potential charging facility partners, and us meeting with Ms. Van Rooyen, the GM. There is literally now a few dinosaurs, in fact, a whole fleet of dinosaurs parked in her basin, diesel vehicles that has been servicing this hotel that she does not intend resurrecting. So that's a great opportunity to actually further drive out opportunities and plug in electric vehicles. Similarly, that's an example of a beautiful Christmas gift Green Cab got from the waterfront. They've got a new destination, a food community called Makers Landing, and we operate currently, sadly still, a diesel guzzling quantum on that service. It's a continuous shuttle service, so it's quite a few big mileage that we put on every year. And as that service expands, we will be plugging in electric vehicles to serve that. So increasingly destinations and facilities like the waterfront that has been quite aggressively green themselves as an opportunity for us to bolster their green credentials. I could not help but stop and take this picture on the left in particular. You'll see the Uber Eats bag, the Mr. D delivery, sitting under the Checkers sign, and those are the micro-mobility delivery vehicles and delivery people, more importantly. So the question is going to be, are we going to drive back better? Yes, we now deliver food to your doorstep and we drive less, and there's a smaller carbon footprint, more people get employed, but what is the nature of that employment? So for those of you who keep your eye on the news, Uber, as in Uber drivers in London, they brought a class action, 45,000 of them, that they actually won just last week to protect their rights as gig workers. Similarly, Uber drivers in South Africa is taking that up, and they, in all likelihood, now that the precedent has been set, will also be successful. And yeah, Uber Eats drivers have been on strike for many times now in terms of the despicable earnings that they earn. So in our opinion, we cannot drive back green if we don't drive back brown. Hence the sustainable and basically dignified livelihood opportunities. If I bring it closer to our mission and what Green Cab is driving, the woman you see here is Julaine Al-Hathroul. She's actually been imprisoned for promoting women drivers and women taxis in Saudi Arabia. She was just released also just a few weeks ago after serving a almost 3-year sentence and being tortured and the like. So if we think it was something of the past, it's very much very current. And coming up later this month, you'll see there's an event that specifically looks at women in trucking and women in the courier service, where we also only represent about 10% of the worker force. In the cab sector, that is closer to 2%. I'll speak to that shortly when I speak about a potential Bolt relationship for Green Cab. There's also been some horrific incidents in another e-hailing app in South Africa called InDriver, where women have exposed the whole crime ring where the cars were hijacked that were specifically occupied by women as softer targets. So I think women are pretty much tired of that and have taken to designing services there where women can hail other women. Some of the examples in South Africa, chauffeur, I think there was a COVID spanner for their wheels hitting the road. They were supposed to launch in 2020. We're waiting for that. Food delivery app called Local has introduced a facility called Her, and then a beautiful, really inspirational Joni Fredericks, South African woman activist, has launched her own transport company, both her own app and a driving school for women. So already a year ago, we were part of an IFC, International Finance Corporation study that was done about whether e-hailing can increase women's participation in the sector, which it pretty much found it can to a great extent. And at the time, the country manager, he's now Africa manager, Gareth Taylor, alluded to the fact that there are only 5% internationally of the million drivers, now many more than million, no doubt, on the Bolt app that is female, and also how excited they are about partnering with us in terms of furthering their electric aspirations. They were formerly Taxify, as you might remember. So that opens a wonderful door for us to basically drive back better. And much of the research that institutions such as the World Bank and UN Women has been doing, just for instance, in the month of September in the US, 4 times more women dropped out. That's not losing jobs, that's dropped out of the sector because the pandemic affected them disproportionately, affected us disproportionately, particularly because of the caring burden. So the funding agencies are scratching their heads, and they're very much committed to that the post-COVID recovery closes that gender gap. So we believe that the time is very much right to get women in the driving seat in South Africa, in the cab sector in general. And that's exactly what we plan to do. We've made beautiful strides, particularly in recent months. We are confident that we'll be awarded flagship status for a women's driving academy, where we will also teach e-driving, obviously operating electric cabs, which there isn't a precedent for yet in South Africa. So yes, that is our aspiration, as I said, from the video being dated, is to roll out own 50 of those cab, where we will be incubating drivers and test driving the jockeys. They will be operating under us in a micro franchise opportunity, so owner driver opportunity, and the target is 500 vehicles in the first 5 years. So watch the space. So we will ask each of the speakers to end our presentation by saying what if we could change one thing in the EV industry, and I'm making it South Africa specific, and why. I can obviously raise the barriers and lack of charging infrastructure and range and the cost of vehicles. But the issue that is closest to heart for us, and where we believe we can make significant inroads, is getting women in the driving seat. So I'd like to see more equity in the industry. I'd like to see more women represented. And the why is that I think we will drive adoption, particularly through the cab sector, much quicker if people get to test drive electric mobility. So that's me, and I'm very much looking forward to taking any questions.
Wow, I mean, thanks so much. It's been great to hear the efforts that the Green Cab are doing, and I think you and I chatted last year in your coffee session with EMCSA, and we spoke about how you're tackling a number of issues all at once. You're tackling women in the economy and getting women involved in the economy. You're obviously tackling environmental sustainability and as well EV. So you're obviously broad shoulders. You know, for such a slight lady, you've got broad shoulders. You're taking a lot on. Thank you so much. I mean, it's an absolute privilege privileged to have people like you in South Africa driving this conversation. So you've generated a lot of questions, and I'm looking at a screen here of 22 plus questions. I'm gonna fire some at you, and I'm gonna see what you think about it. And maybe we can get some answers out of it. Some I think are directly related to what you do, and some are maybe a bit more broad in terms of your understanding around the EV sector. So our first question is from an anonymous attendee. I think it's very interesting. And the question is, what sort of solutions are in the pipeline with regards to EVs in rural areas? And that's the main question. And he says, our local community consists of a small town and many surrounding farms where people travel up to 120 kilometers to get to town for provisions, and EVs don't seem like they would ever be practical in these situations. And that is before even considering the fact that our electrical supply is intermittent at the best times in the Eastern Cape. So what sort of solutions do you see, and I'm putting you on the spot here, in the pipeline for EVs in rural areas, which represents probably 80% of South Africa's land space is actually rural. So what sort of solutions would you like to see for those guys in the rural areas?
Rob, I think that's a fantastic question, and I've been privileged to be exposed to actual demonstration projects that's happening in Zimbabwe at this time. Samantha Blumen and her colleagues back in Zim, looking at how they're actually four-wheelers, so they're a little bit like not like a tuk-tuk, but like a quad bike. And they've got a facility at the back where women can take their produce to market. And that is going extremely well. And how they've very much acknowledged that one would then have to have the infrastructure, and they have set up containerized, these are battery swapping facilities, so that's a little bit easier, of course. So they've set up and also franchised containerized facilities where these batteries can be swapped. And there's a similar demonstration project happening in Namibia as we speak, all driven by women, and particularly given women's work in the agricultural sector. As we know, they're mostly the growers of the subsistence farmers. So yeah, I think there's wonderful opportunity for application there.
So in your mind, you see the rural sector actually being more of an opportunity, so people shouldn't see it as a challenge. What they should be saying is, here's a market where maybe your traditional OEMs haven't really looked into it, and this is a chance where South Africans can come up with South African solutions, and we can come up with vehicles that are designed specifically for rural areas. Is that what I'm hearing from you, Amiene?
Absolutely, Rob. I think it's an exciting opportunity. I hope the person who posed the question will get out there and do something.
Fantastic. Well, it's obviously from the Eastern Cape, and it's great to have people tuning in from rural areas. Got another great question here from you, and I think it's an interesting one that's very prevalent because of COVID. So the gentleman's posted, he said, while he applauds the Green Card's efforts, I'm assuming towards e-hailing and e-taxi cabs, COVID has shown the potential danger of being in the same space as another human being. What about promoting autonomous, in inverted commas, single-person vehicles, from electric bikes through to scooters, through to vehicles such as an FUV, a fun utility vehicle, also the micro limo. So his question is, he's interested in single-person vehicle space, and where do you see this coming and going in South Africa?
Yeah, very appropriate. Yes, it would have to be micro, however, because if we're talking autonomous, which is another matter, those people who know me will know that I'm not a fan of autonomous mobility. I believe that we need to create jobs, and we need to create dignified jobs. That's what we need more than anything. So the one-person occupancy, if it's micro mobility, yes, I think there is a fantastic opportunity for that. There's also brilliant interventions that is actually aerial. I'm not talking flying cars. I'm talking on magnetized rails. So there are ways of keeping people safe. That is, for us, you can imagine the challenge that it is posed for our corporates as well. So if vehicles are bespoke and at least one can trace, and in the 6-seaters we limit the capacity. For instance, in the waterfront, we are still operating at 50% capacity by choice, and we have obviously instituted all the COVID hygiene safety measures. What Bolt has done, both to protect women and also to address that question, is to start installing quite a rigid screen I know that the London eCity has got that screen by design. I've witnessed some smoke tests where they've showed how it only stays in the front cabin. So yeah, all of those, I think there's no one size fits all. I think there are a multiplicity of and intermodal solutions, but that they all need to be electrified and ideally charged renewably. That's a fact.
So I mean that's really interesting answer, and I think it shows how things are going to be so different, and people need to look at things from a different point of view. Devon, we have a great question that's come in, and it's something that I think is really interesting. Somebody asked us, would South Africa ever invest in e-cycles or e-scooters? What's your opinion on e-cycles and e-scooters? And then we're going to hand over to Amiene to hear what she has to say.
I think it's the future of it. It's last mile mobility, so to speak, and it's taking off all over the world. And there's many companies, including my own, that's trying to get involved in this space and in this game. And then it's all about keeping the last mile delivery. So talk about a cell phone that needs to go from a warehouse to a customer. And then you have zero emissions vehicles like e-scooters, e-bicycles to get the food deliveries, to get the e-scooters out there into the market, and at least as a start, and get the South Africans used to this new type of transportation and the new way of doing business.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Amiene, your thoughts on e-scooters and e-cycles?
I think Devon pretty much said it all. I can only second that.
Fantastic. So here's a question for you both. Now, you both are experts in the e-mobility field. I'm going to give this to Amiene first, and maybe Devon, you can hand over afterwards. We have a gentleman who's asked, as a young engineer, how does he get into the e-mobility field? So the question is, as a young engineer in the automation field, how can I contribute to this green movement and be a part of the way forward? Amiene, to yourself. So, gentlemen, I'm assuming he's a student, maybe finishing his engineering degree in automation. How does someone like that, this is someone who's obviously intrigued, youthful, full of energy. How does someone like that find their way into the sector? Amiene, your thoughts?
Yes, that is so exciting to hear, because that is where the future lies, and that is exactly the generation that needs to be excited by this. So I can recommend two things: to be plugged into various associations. We are slightly dormant at that stage, but if you look at evia.org, Electric Vehicle Industry Association of South Africa, you should be able to access some resources there. And then I think the best other go-to would be Hiten Parmar and them from Uyilo at Nelson Mandela Bay University, UYLO, Uyilo. So that would be a brilliant port of call, because I know they're already working with quite a few young entrepreneurs and engineering students.
Fantastic. And Devon, your thoughts?
Oh, this is a fantastic opportunity for the future. The industry is going to change. It's not as if we're going to lose jobs. It's just that the types of jobs are going to change. So therefore, engineers from the ice age, so to speak, that are used to fixing internal combustion engines and building them.
The very touchy comment you just made there, the ice age. People become extinct in the ice age.
Yes, I think that's what's going to happen. And it's now a case of us being forward focused, so to speak. So the nature of the jobs are going to change. So engineers will now be building electric battery powered vehicles. We've got a number of local OEMs that need the skills, that need the talent, and they will be changing their product line as well going forward. So the current production lineup will be changing to EV cars. Therefore, we're going to need EV experts, EV engineers, and in my opinion, the local universities have to start feeding the OEMs. And therefore, plenty of opportunity for the future in this regard.
Fantastic. Thank you. So, Amiene, we're getting to the end of your kind of session. I mean, we've had a lot of questions and we can go through them all. I think there's really one here that a lot of people want to ask, and I'm sure it's a question that's going to come up throughout the next 2 days. AndD like to hear your perspective of it, because obviously you're in the e-hailing, you're looking at that side of things. And we got a question here from a gentleman who said, how do we make sure that there's enough infrastructure for EVs in South Africa? Now, this is a big one. I mean, I think every speaker will have their opinion on it, but you've been in this industry for a long time. You've been one of the first movers. I think anyone who's in the EV space knows you. You've done a lot. You've been around. This isn't, you haven't just decided to join the EV space in the last year or two. So in your opinion, how do we ensure that there's enough infrastructure for the EV movement coming in South Africa? What do you see as maybe two priorities? Let me ask you for two main things when it comes to EV infrastructure.
Yes. So a quick one would be, particularly now in our sector, would be range anxiety and range. And fortunately, just in the past 2 years, range have doubled. So that's just kind of somewhat sorted itself. So the biggest barrier obviously would be, and I think Daryl will be best placed to speak about that, our next speaker, about the grid supporting electric charging, is the rollout of charging facilities. Now we know that there are a few players associated with the OEMs that have electrified a highway from Joburg to Cape Town and the Garden Route, and that's most encouraging. It is still, however, we would have dedicated DC fast chargers, because for the most part, increasingly even your redefines and your growth points and your waterfront companies are putting up charging facilities, but they are slow chargers, ACs, for the shoppers and people who maybe work in the waterfront. So we would address that relatively easily. The distances in Cape Town is short, fortunately, with strategically placed DC fast chargers, so that we can do top-ups in the drivers' coffee breaks. That was the example of Hotel Vert that I've mentioned. That's exactly the purpose of that. So increasingly what seemed like insurmountable barriers and hurdles in the past is now feeling very manageable.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I think maybe Devon, from your side, any other thoughts on how do we, I mean, this is going to be a topic that we talk about a lot. This is going to be essentially the next 2 days. Yeah. What would you see as some of the key points to ensure that there's enough infrastructure for EVs when they come to South Africa?
Absolutely. Now that's the game that I'm heavily involved in. So the other company I represent is One Stop Charge, and that's my job, to roll out an infrastructure of chargers in South Africa. And how do we do it? Point one, we need investment funding. These chargers are quite expensive, and obviously there needs to be a massive rollout before our consumers are incentivized in some way to say it's safe.
Yeah.
And we have the chargers. Where do we start? How do we do it? Which regions, which areas? Do we put them in shopping malls? Do we put them next to gyms? Do we have fast chargers, slow chargers? These are all the topics that we'll be discussing over the next 2 days. It's exciting, and we are starting the process here.
Sure.
And I think there's plenty of players in the market. I'm one of them, where we need the funding to say, guys, this is the plan. I personally want to roll out 100 chargers in the next 12 months, and that's just me.
Sure.
There's plenty, there's plenty of opportunity. We know the future is electric, so we need to get there somehow, and then we need a smart plan as to how we get there.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I'm gonna leave it there. I mean, we've got a lot of questions. I think that maybe you can just leave us with your final thoughts. So let's say your elevator pitch. You got 1 minute. I get in an elevator with you, Amiene. I've never heard of the green cab, never heard of EVs. How do you sell me, as Rob Walker, as a guy who might have gone down to my local OEM dealership next week and bought a different kind of car? How would you sell me on an EV in 1 minute? Go.
Good one, Rob. Well, as you can see, this has made me grayer even, which I'm proud of. And yeah, it is the inevitable future. So it is about how we roll it out. And I still believe that the cab sector can play, if not the most significant role in doing that. And it's not even, we're speaking with the likes of IFC, the World Bank, etc. It's development investment. It's saying that if we get women in sustainable livelihoods, get them operating EVs in the e-hailing sector, they will have a sustainable livelihood. So yeah, we have little doubt that we're on the right road, and it's getting downhill from here, it feels.
Fantastic. Well, from my side, Devon, I'm sold.
I'm happy.
It's first morning of EMCSA. I'm ready to go and buy my first EV. From all of us here in the studio at EMCSA, thank you so much for taking your time out this morning, presenting to us. I've got so many questions here. They just keep ticking through, so unfortunately we can't get through them all. We would encourage anyone who has some questions, drop them on our Facebook page. I see some of our attendees are actually answering each other's questions here, so that's great. People, experts answering experts. But Amiene, from myself and Devon here in studio, thank you so much, and we wish you a lovely rest of the March and your Monday morning, and we hope that you tune in and watch the rest of EMCSA with us. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amiene. So I think it's so interesting to hear from Amiene. I mean, she's been one of the early movers in the industry. She's she's really brought it through. She started with seeing an opportunity by bringing in e-hailing mobility. Then she's brought on bringing women into the economy, which we know in South Africa is a big challenge. We need to involve females in our economy. And she's taken on so much, and she's been in it for more than 10 years. I mean, a lot of people saying, EVs is a flash in the pan. They've only just heard of it. Here's someone who's been out there and been an early pioneer of EVs. And I think it's great to have those kind of people in our industry, Divan.
Absolutely. And she deserves all our support, and between all the delegates and all the investors that are listening, these are the kind of people that we need to 100%. Promote, we need to highlight. She's done a fantastic job up to now. I wish her the best, and I also, though, from my side, want to see that she has the right products. I mean, she's indicated there's a few products that she wants to look at, but ultimately she's not a manufacturer.
Sure.
I don't want her to be importing cars and having to have them ready for our market. I want her to be I wanted to have access to an OEM that can supply you with the right taxis, with the right cars at the right price.
100%.
And she doesn't have to go through the hoops of now saying, I've got a taxi business and I can do it successfully.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So what I think now going forward is for me one of the hot seat topics now. Okay, so now we've got Mr. Daryl Chapman.
Right.
He's the project manager for e-mobility at Eskom. Right. Now, all the South Africans out there saying, oh, Eskom. And I think he knows the very first question that's going to come his way. Yeah. How is Eskom going to supply electricity when there's more EVs on the road? I mean, everyone's asking that question. So I think it's great for us to be having such kind of speakers, answering the questions in the hot seat. Yeah. I mean, he stepped in, first morning of EMCSA, he's here, he's going to answer questions.
Brilliant.
What are you hoping to hear from Daryl this morning?
I'm hoping to hear that Eskom has a plan, that we expect all these EVs to be coming at these volumes, at these expected times in the future. And Eskom has a plan to say, for Gauteng and all the different regions, we'll have a grid that's strong enough to cope with the charging. We will be able to accept these cars and be able to move with the transition. And in terms of his volumes, in terms of his projections, I want to see that it fits in also in terms of worldwide planning, which has changed quite a lot in the last 1 year. So that's in essence, what I want to hear from him. And if they can't, what are the alternate plans maybe? And if there are any other technologies that we can look to help them along.
Fantastic. So it sounds really exciting. I mean, obviously, we know Daryl's going to come on board with us soon. I would like to just remind we've got a lot of attendees joining us on Zoom this morning. To our people on Zoom who tuned in, who registered, if you would like to ask our speaker a question, please kindly type it in our question bar. If you raise your hand, we unfortunately won't be able to make you go live. So it's really important that you please type your question in, and we will try and get to every question we can. Obviously, a limited amount of time. So if you have a question that's specifically towards that speaker, please let us know. So, direct it at Mr. Chapman. I know that some questions are very general, so we'll try and get through those in the day. Yeah. But if you have a speaker-specific question, please make sure that you tell us, this is for the speaker, Mr. Chapman. Alternatively, we also are running a poll, and I think what's quite interesting, I'm going to give Amiene the results here. So we ran a poll which said, would you prefer an electric vehicle as a taxi if it was available at the same rate as an ICE vehicle? 93% of our respondents have said yes. That's a massive answer.
Wow.
So that is 93% of people saying they would prefer to be in an EV rather than an ICE vehicle. And I think, Amiene, that tells you that your market is there. So it's absolutely there. There's a massive amount of interest in people would prefer to ride in an EV taxi rather than an ICE one. I think that's amazing.
Brilliant.
So that to me tells me a huge story. So what I'd like to try and suggest is that's our poll for Amiene. Again, everyone who is online, you can vote in our next poll, and that's going to be aimed at Mr. Daryl Chapman. So I think it's going to be exciting to chat to Daryl. I'm going to encourage all the guys on board to take some questions. Obviously, guys, we know Eskom is quite a emotive subject in this country.
Yes.
So let's give Mr. Chapman an opportunity to answer those questions and give him the opportunity to give their side of the story.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Fantastic.
That's a big one.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere at the moment. We're going to take a quick 60-second comfort break, and we'll be back very shortly with Mr. Daryl Chapman from Eskom. you.